Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Maligayang Pagdating sa my chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So I'm actually going to be doing a tournament that I honestly didn't even know existed until yesterday. I saw a random clip on YouTube and I was like, let me look into this, man. So it is the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. So anyways, man, I got the first round game between Quang Liêm and Wesley. So pretty exciting game. Both players played really well. Let me bump that up a touch. Okay. All of my people coming from the Philippines already, I will say mabuhay to you. Magandang umaga. It is very early morning. It's like almost not even 4 a.m. So I think probably all you guys are asleep. So when you wake up, amasal tayo. Maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Post na nanonood ng aking mga video. Anybody who is coming from Vietnam, I will say Jiao Mui Nui and come on Ben. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, homie. So we got the move D4. It's also best by test. Bobby Fischer preferred E4. We do see the move knight to F6. Of course, as I always say, white would love nothing more than to literally get all of these pawns covering all of the center. So black is basically like, bro, you're not doing that, son. Not on my watch. So we do see the move C4. We got E6. And then we have knight to F3. And this is the anti-Nimzo. If we see knight to C3 first, a lot of the times you see bishop to B4. Making a really, really annoying pin. So usually white likes to try to avoid that with going knight to F3. We do see the move D5, and it is only now that we see knight to C3. We do see bishop to B4, so this is the Ragozin, and this is pretty agreed upon the strongest way to play against the setup that white has adopted. We do see queen to A4, and this is a very, very forcing variation. Any of you guys who do play the Ragozin as black, they know that this is a very, very, hard, move to meet because it does quite a few things. After we see knight to C6, this is literally the only move you can make. All other moves completely don't do what you need to do because the issue is not only are you in check, but you are hitting this lonely bishop on b4. So that is one of the main ideas. And the only way to protect this bishop is to go knight to c6. So if you're on the white side, it's great because you're forcing black into, specific ways of playing. We do see the move e3. We see castles by black. We got queen down to c2. Obviously, one of the main ideas is to expand more in the center. So queen to c2 is trying to help you do that. We do see rook to e8, and then we do see bishop to d2. After we see a6, we do see a3, asking a question to the bishop. Kind of what do you want to do now? I mean, your whole main purpose was to pin this knight down to the king and, really, really prevent the move e4. But as of now, we got bishop to d3 possibly coming, e4 coming. So, I mean, this bishop is a little bit oddly placed in this position, and you do actually kind of want to preserve it. The whole main point of the move is so that you can capture this knight on c3 and damage white structure. But since bishop to d2 and queen to c2 have been played, you don't really get that. So it's not really beneficial for you to give up your bishop. We do see rook going over to d1. Never a bad idea to put a rook opposite a queen. You never know what might open up in the future. We do see the move h6, just creating some lift. The white says, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. We got bishop to d7. We see bishop to e2, just trying to get ready to castle. Pawn takes c4, pawn takes c4, and this is another one of the ideas from black. When you do have this pawn structure where it's c4, d4, and then e6, d5, you do have a situation where you would ideally like to wait until this bishop, deploys itself somewhere before you capture here, making white waste the tempo. It's not a bad issue for white, to waste that tempo, but it's one of the ideas. We do see the move up b5, and then we see the novelty of the game, which is bishop to d3. Kind of crazy because d3 is by far one of the strongest places to put this light squared bishop in pretty much almost all types of openings. And it is also helping you, try to expand more in the center. So immediately what black says is like, hey, man, I don't want you to do that. So we do see the move e5. really trying to shut down your expansion. You can't do it right now because this would just be a dropping of a pawn. Plus, your king is still in the center, so you got to be a little careful. We do see castles by white. We see queen to e7, and you have a very real issue if you are white. You have these pieces ready to be forked, so you really kind of have to act fast. So we do see the move d5. Knocking, hitting one of your pieces with tempo. The knight goes back to d8, and then we do see the move e4, and this does solve that issue that you were having. So we have actually reached a point in the game that black has a really nice move that they can play. It's not the absolute only move, but I want to see if you can guess not only the move, but the idea behind the move that Wesley So plays coming up. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess that, go ahead and do so. Okay, so there's a couple things that you have to think about if you are black. Number one, white has more space than you. So you have to try to figure out, okay, what am I going to do to try to, take over some of this space, like chip away at some of this space that white has gained on me. And one of the most obvious things is a pawn break. So one of the things you should notice is that definitely by far white's strongest pawn is going to be this d pawn. It is protected and it has a possibility of being passed. So you definitely want to try to chip away at that. So the move that I was looking for is c6. Like I said, recognizing that white has just way too much space and you have to try to cut that down some way. You also want to try to make your own pawn dynamic. So this is a very nice freeing pawn break that black had. So if you found that move, you would be a pretty positionally inclined player. So congratulations. But we do see rook's f to e1. White is not wanting to oblige black in successfully breaking down their structure. And plus, supporting the e4 pawn is one of the most important things you need to be doing in chess ever. So we do see knight going to b7. We see pawn taking c6, bishop taking c6, and then we do see knight to h4. You guys, watching a lot of my videos, when we do have e4, e5 locked together, one of the major squares that white and black try to gain access to are going to be these f4 and f5 squares. It's a really, really nice outpost. Plus, sometimes there's tactics with knight takes h6, and then, maybe you can capture the knight type stuff like that. So we do see bishop back to d7 trying to prevent that move. We got queen down to c1. We got rook a to c8. And I mean, is white trying to sacrifice on h6? They actually don't, but to kind of show you what that may look like, the bishop could possibly take h6. You would probably see pawn taking h6, one of the best moves. Queen taking h6, and you actually have some real threats in the position if you are white. The absolute best way to try to defend this is to back the knight up and try to block what white is trying to do, because you are going to be seeing this rook lift, and this does allow the king to step over. Because of h3, you do not have any rook over here, plus this bishop. The major thing about this situation, why this sacrifice is possible, is because this bishop is actually blunted on this diagonal by this pawn. So you can successfully do this kind of rook lift. So that would have been an idea, but we did not see that. We actually saw a move that was, pretty great in its own right. It's just bishop back to c2, just covering the queen, because we do have a lot of pressure, on this particular, in this section with this rook opposite this queen. And that is why after bishop to c5, we see knight back to f3. We got a5, and then we do see the queen recognizing that there are a lot of threats on that c file and just sidestepping that altogether. We got b4, pawn takes b4, bishop takes b4, and then knight does go to d5. And this is allowing a trade of pieces, but it is somewhat beneficial for white. After we see knight taking d5, pawn taking d5, now what we have successfully done is passed this pawn. We have we have brought it from the e file to the d file, so now it's a passed d pawn. So it may or may not be an issue, and black is definitely going to be looking at trying to blockade that pawn so it doesn't go any further up the board. We do see queen to f6, bishop takes b4, pawn takes b4, and then we do see knight down to d2. Why not try to plop into e4? But black, trying to be one step ahead, goes queen to b6, knight goes back to f3. We do repeat position, get back into the same situation, and then we do see now the blockading of the pawn on d6. So one of white's plans is to try to get rid of this blockade on their d pawn so that they can just continue to push it and make threats. So we do see knight to e4 trying to dislodge, and then we do see queen to g6. Knight goes to c5, and this is kind of a little cute move. I'm not going to lie, because, I mean, you are hitting this queen. You're not really threatening much when it comes to, you know, bishop to h7, because the king is just going to move over, so you're good. But, I mean, it's cute. You're discovering an attack on the queen. We do see bishop going to f5, you know, defending against this idea. Bishop takes f5, knight takes f5. Now, through some effort, you have successfully, you know, gotten rid of the blockade in front of your d-pawn, but black is definitely going to be trying to, you know, create some threats and make your passed pawn irrelevant. We do see knight up to d7. We got queen down to g5. And one of the major threats that we're looking at is, I mean, knight to h4, which is what you're going to see come up. The queen goes to e4, and we do see that knight to h4. And even though it doesn't really seem like much because you're like, man, I'm protecting the pawn, you have to be very careful because f5 is a really, really huge idea. And the problem now is if f5 is played, where do you go now? Because there is checkmate on g2. So you have to play very, very specifically here. And so we do see the move g3. And then knight comes up to g6. And then we do see the move d6. Now, backing up a second, after we see the move g3, it is actually super suggested that you recognize that this knight is undefended and you go back queen to d8. And this is a super computer way of playing. It's not unlike a human to be able to recognize something like this from coming up because, I mean, even though your knight is hit, there is an undefended piece as well. So it's definitely possible. And then after queen takes, the queen would be taking here. And I mean, everything is kind of everything, but we do not see that. After g3, we did see knight going up to g6, and then we do see d6. And there is actually a very, very real threat in the position, and it basically, Wesley So has to find this threat. We do see queen going up to d8, and the threat is actually completely live in the position, but Quang Liêm does miss it for one move. He goes queen to f5. And then we see e4 by Wesley So. And the problem is now this threat comes into the position. Now, something that you guys might notice in this position here is that you do have the rooks on forkable squares if this pawn can make it to d7. So the threat is a knight goes to f6 with check. And then after, like, literally whatever you do have this d7 thing. And it actually does come up in the game. It's just delayed one move. So we do see these moves here. And then after this, you do see that knight to f6 idea. Giving up the knight doesn't really matter like how you kind of go about doing it. You are threatening this d7 move. After queen takes f6, queen takes f6, pawn takes f6, you do have this d7 idea. And like I said, it was present a little bit before, but it wasn't the end of the world that, you know, you didn't see it. We do see knight to e5, and then we do see pawn taking c8 queens. And it is actually in this position that Wesley So resigns the game. And you might kind of be looking at it like, well, why does white resign? I mean, or why does Wesley So resign? Because it's like, I mean, this doesn't look dead lost. Well, it's kind of a matter of principle because it is a very, very undesirable position for you to play if you are black, especially the fact that you only have like a minute and something left. So you're basically going to have to play bullet chess with this type of an imbalance. So if you do want to try to understand exactly why, you know, Wesley So would be giving up in this position, automatically you would be looking at rook takes c8. And then you would be looking at rook taking e4. And the obvious major problem is the fact that you do have an imbalance, a rook and a knight versus two rooks. I mean, that is the most obvious thing. The other thing that you have to think about is that you do kind of have a lot of damage to your structure. And this type of a structure requires that the kings stay pretty close. So you don't really have the movability with your king that white will have with their structure looking good. And you have the ability to start kind of kicking this knight around, putting yourself in passive positions. And then also this rook is hitting this pawn. So what do you do about that? It is suggested, absolutely, to go rook to c4. But, I mean, really no human is going to kind of do that because you're in a situation where you're going to give up your last strong piece for, you know, their piece, and it's going to be a knight versus a rook. You don't really want to do that. So going something like this, I mean, like I said, you are knocking this knight and you are going to really, really be pressuring this pawn a lot. So in light of all of that stuff, Wesley So says, bro, I don't want to really deal with any of that stuff. So he goes ahead and throws a towel in. But it was a very nicely played game by both players. I mean, it was you just have to kind of recognize that giving up your knight for the opponent's knight was really kind of the way to go. And I mean, it is something kind of tough to find, you know, with just a couple minutes on the clock. So I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat, Come on, Ben, and I'll see you guys next time.